Hello and thank you for joining us for the France 24 interview. Today we're going to turn our eye to events in Hong Kong, where people last weekend headed to the ballot box for the first time since mass protests erupted in June. Well, the district council poll was seen as a kind of proxy referendum on the entire protest movement and its calls for greater democratic rights. Well, a record 2.9 million people turned up at polling stations and delivered a landslide victory to the pro-democracy camp, and in the process delivered a stunning rebuke to Beijing and to the leader of the former British colony, Carrie Lam. So where does this leave the Hong Kong leadership, and what are Beijing's options? And how are events likely to unfold there? Well, here to give us his perspective is our guest today, Dennis Kwok, who is a member of Hong Kong's Legislative Council and a founding member of the Civic Party. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for
coming to see us. Now, the pro-democracy bloc in Hong Kong has won control of 17 out of 18 district councils. Previously, you controlled 0. Mm-hmm. Let's face it, councillors' powers are fairly limited. Nevertheless, this is a very symbolic victory for the pro-democracy camp. What impact do you think this is going to have on how events unfold from here in Hong Kong?
I think this is a referendum of the Hong Kong people's opinion about how this current government and how Beijing is handling the situation. This is the most democratic election there is in Hong Kong. 2.9 million people came out to vote, and any question about there being a silent majority who are against the protest pretty much is not credible anymore. And I think this deliver a fatal blow to the leadership in the Hong Kong government, who are basically, in the eyes of the Hong Kong people, have lost all the public trust and integrity.
To be fair on the chief executive of Hong Kong, Carrie Lam, she acknowledges that this outcome of that vote is a clear reflection of the level of sort of unhappiness with her administration and how it's handled events during the course of these last 6 months. Has there been any action to accompany that mea culpa from Carrie Lam?
Well, you know, the Hong Kong people have been calling for the 5 demands since June. They've only met one of them, which is to withdraw the extradition bill 4 months down the line. But she has still not reacted or responded to any of the other demands on especially investigation into police brutality, which is, I think, what the Hong Kong people are most angry about, and she has not addressed that at all.
Can she survive?
I don't think so. I think we are looking at someone who is on the way out. As to when, no one knows, but I think the pro-establishment politicians are most unhappy with her because she is seen as someone who dragged all of them into the political abyss.
Okay, and her approval rating is about 20%.
I think it's minus 40 or something like that.
It's extremely low.
Yeah.
It's a record low, in fact. And I mean, you know, you say replacing her would appease protesters, but replace her with who?
That's a very good question. I think Hong Kong people have had a successive series of leadership who have failed the Hong Kong people. You're talking about the ugly and the uglier and the really bad. And so I think even if they put up some other guy or woman up there, the Hong Kong people are basically saying, we've had enough of this. What happened to the universal suffrage promise under the basic law? We want that instead. Otherwise, no leader would be able to really govern Hong Kong well.
So what does Beijing make of the result of that election at the weekend, and what do you think their next move is going to be?
Well, you know, their standard line is always, you know, their reaction was Hong Kong is part of China and nothing will ever change that. I think they're really deliberately misreading the situation here. The Hong Kong people doesn't want independence from China. All they want is the original promise under the Basic Law and the Sino-British Joint Declaration. And for them to come out and say, well, Hong Kong will always be part of China is kind of missing the point. The point really is the Hong Kong people are telling Beijing and the political leadership in government, this is not working, and you better make it work, otherwise this crisis will not go away.
Another major development of late has been the signing of the Human Rights Bill on Hong Kong by the US President Donald Trump. You know, Beijing calls all of this external interference in China's affairs. Now, does something like that action by the US president help or hinder the pro-democracy movement in your view?
You know, Beijing has been calling this whole movement external influence from day one. I mean, the 1 million march, the 2 million march, they call that foreign interference as well. I think it's an insult to the intelligence of the Hong Kong people to say that they were somehow pushed by the CIA or whatever to go out on the streets. But at the same time, I acknowledge that we do need international support. We are international financial and business center, a metropolis. We do need international community to speak out for Hong Kong and to take concrete action to support Hong Kong in saying to Beijing, look, if you want Hong Kong to continue to be successful and prosperous as an IFC, you need to honor the promise under one country, two systems. And I think that's precisely what the Human Rights and Democracy Act does, which is to hold Beijing to account.
And you've met Nancy Pelosi, other pro-democracy figures have met, other senior US political figures. There are people who've singled you out on the mainland as being part of this foreign machinery that's trying to undermine Hong Kong and in the process undermine Beijing. What do you say to them?
You know, I think they really don't understand how Hong Kong works. I mean, we are an international city. We talk to foreign politicians and officials all the time. Whoever comes to Hong Kong, we meet with them. We tell them about Hong Kong. And it's also important to recognize that the Hong Kong Policy Act enacted by the US Congress in 1992 is fundamental in supporting Hong Kong as the IFC. So it is very well that we go out there and tell people about Hong Kong and also to engage them and to get their support. Because without the international support, they could run all over the Hong Kong people. And they are capable of doing that. So we need their support. So I don't care what they call me, traitor, whatever. I think the Hong Kong people fundamentally understand what we're trying to do.
You have got your supporters. You've also got your critics, as most people in the political spotlight do. One particular controversy that I dug up was that you accused a fellow lawmaker, Junius Ho, back in August of being a member of the Triad group. And for the benefit of our viewers, the Triads, of course, are gangsters in Hong Kong. Do you think that he is a member of a gangster organization, a gang? Or, what do you think is the level of gangster involvement in these events in Hong Kong of late?
I think you and the viewers probably know about this event on the 21st of July that happened in the New Territories, Yuen Long in Hong Kong, where hundreds of gangsters dressed in white with a red ribbon were beating a lot of Hong Kong people, passengers, women and young people. And afterwards, there was a video clip showing Junius Ho shaking hands with these white people dressed in white and thanking them, calling them heroes. So on another occasion, I accused him of, have you colluded with these gangsters to organize this attack on the Hong Kong people? He has so far not answered my allegations directly, and we'll continue to pursue them until we find the answers.
Just looking at Hong Kong and how much it's changed in the last 10 or 15 years. I mean, I've lived in Hong Kong. You know Hong Kong well. We saw close to 3 million people casting their ballots at the weekend. I mean, that's more than double the turnout in the 2015 district council election. In my day, Hong Kong was never a particularly political place. People were focused on business, getting business done. And that really was the focus of people's lives. What do you think has changed in the fabric of Hong Kong society?
I think in the past few months, people in Hong Kong has woken up to the fact that we cannot continue to be a prosperous and healthy, well-governed city unless there are deep changes to the way government works in Hong Kong. And also the way that government can just ignore 2 million people came out on the streets and just brush away all the demands as if they don't exist is completely unheard of in any other democratic jurisdiction. But in Hong Kong, people realize if we don't stand up now, one country, two systems, we don't have to wait until 2047. It will be gone in 5 years. So this is about our future.
But do you think that given how Hong Kong is run and how its leadership is chosen, I mean, do you think one country, two systems has ever been a reality?
You know, the original concept of one country, two systems was for Hong Kong people to govern Hong Kong, especially for moderates. This is the words of Deng Xiaoping, for moderates within both camps, democracy and pro-establishment, to govern Hong Kong. Because Hong Kong, as you know, you've lived there, is a pretty mainstream, moderate society. People don't want radical, upset to the system. But right now, people have had enough. They're saying, what happened to the universal suffrage and democracy that is promised us? And not apart from not honoring that promise, they are taking away our freedom and liberty. And that really touched on the raw nerve of the Hong Kong people, and we will not accept any of that.
I read a piece that you penned, an opinion piece, where you talk about how Hong Kong, which ranks something like number 16 in the World Justice Project's Rule of Law Index, China quite close, mainland China quite close to the bottom of that index. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty unrealistic, isn't it, to expect Hong Kong to come down to that level? And therefore, shouldn't the mainland authorities think about how to perhaps improve their standing on that same index, if there's going to be any kind of interface and any kind of compatibility between these two systems?
Yeah, well, as I said, if we go back to the original design of one country, two system, the 50-year period is when what's supposed to happen is that China will continue to improve their governance and the rule of law so that the two systems will be compatible at some point in time. But the contrary has happened. Not only has they not improved on the rule of law, on freedom and the respect for human rights, they've actually gone even more authoritarian under President Xi Jinping. And the extradition bill touched on that very raw nerve, which is how can you send Hong Kong people and foreign nationals who are in Hong Kong to face criminal trials in China, where there's no respect for human rights, no rule of law, no due process, etc. And that basically highlights the fundamental difference between the two systems. Now, if one country, two system is to work, they need to respect the difference between the two systems.
Just very briefly, sum up for us, if you will, because we're almost out of time, where you see events heading to from here.
I think it is important to understand what Hong Kong people are fighting for are the common values that you and I and many people in the Western world believe in: freedom, democracy, and liberty. And Hong Kong people's fight is the fight and struggle of the rest of the Western world who are facing authoritarianism rising, and we need to look them in the face and see them for who they are.
All right, well, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us today. Dennis Kwok, a member of Hong Kong's Legislative Council and a founding member of the Civic Party. Thank you so much, and thank you to you for watching. Stay tuned to France 24.
Your needs are changing, and so is France24.com. With articles, reports, the latest international news, all our programmes available on replay, together with live broadcasting 24/7. Intuitive, fast, and available in 4 languages. France24.com. Liberté, égalité, actualité.